Welcome back to the best series here, brought to you by 65 Hurls. Go to 65hurls.com if you want to get your sticks. Michael Verney, the best speedster. It's a topic that we were thinking long and hard. What's a good topic? Like best hard man, that kind of went down well. Best speedster, because not every county has a huge amount of them, but no better place to start than Cork. Because if it's one thing they don't have All Ireland medals in the last 15 years, but by God, they have any amount of speedsters.
They have an absolute ball of pace, and I suppose that's what makes, if you think of Cork on a going day, particularly up front, they can absolutely kill you with pace, and they can kill you. There's a funny thing, pace and speed there's different types, obviously. So I would say like Dara Fitzgibbon is kind of in the old school, like Jerry O'Connor style, where he can stay going the same speed for about 40 or 50 metres, and he could probably just even he'd be a yard ahead of you at the start, and he's slowly pulling away from you. Then there's other guys, maybe like Alan Cadigan, who gets the ball, and it's that initial couple of yards that he's gone, and he's created the 2 or 3 yards to shoot. So they have different types of players like that. I would say Conor Lahan kind of falls between the two of them, actually. He has that initial burst, and he has that sustained kind of pace as well. But Cork are absolutely blessed with them. When we went down through it, we were looking at Conor Lahan, Alan Cadigan, Robbie O'Flynn, Shane Kingston, and Dara Fitzgibbon are probably the 5 that we pulled out. And they're all from midfield up. And you're kind of wondering, with that sort of pace, and they're all really good hurlers too, you're wondering maybe why they're not killing you on the scoreboard maybe more than they should be. And interesting enough, their best forward and the most reliable player over the last 5 or 6 years is Patrick Horgan, who might not necessarily be the fastest, but in terms of the mind and the wrists, he is easily the fastest of them all.
Well, there's an interesting point. Why is Patrick Horgan so good? If he's not a pace merchant, and it's because of his movement. Like, he's using his head. Whereas, is there ever a thing where a young player comes through and he's absolutely lightning pace, and because he never had to kind of sell a dummy or anything like that, because he could just always run around lads underage, just go 5 yards right and I'll arc away from the guys and no one will be able to keep into me, that they never developed that now, that ability to give a guy a step and send him the other direction and then go and get a ball uncontested, that they're always doing everything at 100 miles an hour, or they turn and I don't know, they have themselves almost panicked. Like the Theo Walcott thing with soccer. You're always wondering, this guy can kick the ball. He's obviously able to run really fast. Why can't he put it together and have any sort of consistency? So I think that could be an issue for certain players. And I'm not necessarily saying the Cork lads, but Conor Lahan, I mean, when he's on the top of the sod and it's a fast day, and you think of him probably against the likes of Tipperary and Thurles on a baking hot day, if he gets ball in space, he's really, really hard to stop. Like Dara Fitzgibbon, if he's on the front foot coming onto the ball, someone gives it to him off the shoulder and he's running at you, you're not really going to stop him. Shane Kingston turn and run at you. Robbie Flynn probably has that burning pace from the first step, plus he can stay at that high speed. Luke Mead is probably not quite at the very top end. He's kind of a combination of elusive but also pretty quick as well. And there was a bit of that when we were talking through all the different counties. Some lads are hard to stop at their top pace because maybe they're a bit of a powerhouse. And Austin Gleason came to mind. Like, he's a powerful enough sort of guy, and he's got a big frame. So if he runs at you, he's fairly quick. But by God, if he goes, he'll go through you as well. And he's just hard to stop when he gets momentum. Then other guys are elusive, like Graham Mulcahy, for example. Pretty quick in a straight line, but by God, he can change direction and change gear on you too. So that kind of, but it's kind of different than the straight out speedster.
100%. Something interesting you said there as well, I thought. Like if you put a lot of lads maybe that aren't in this speedster category in a 100-meter race or a 50-meter race with a lot of these guys, they would be well beaten. But yet, sometimes when you put them in a match situation, like I would say, TJ Reid is not blessed with pace. He's not slow, but it's his speed of movement and his anticipation, and it's the sidestep and being able to do all these kind of little dummies. He buys himself that kind of yard. Whereas what you said there about some of the really fast lads, maybe they haven't developed an unbelievable sidestep because they've never had to really get away from lads. They've always been able to run past them. Like you've done sprints in training, no more than I have as well. And there's always a lad whose anticipation is just on the money. He can almost sense when the clap is going to come or when the whistle is going to come, and he's gone. And that's a lot of it too, is your kind of reaction. If, as I said, if you're to put lads in a 100-metre race, they might leave you behind. But it's not a 100-metre race. There's a lad pulling your jersey. There's different things that goes on. Like the lad that's maybe not blessed with the pace might have a really good handoff just before the ball comes, pushes your man back, and then he has a yard. But if we're talking about like balls of speed, like even we were blessed with them when we went through Munster. Like Clare, like Shane O'Donnell immediately stood out for me just because when he gets the ball, yeah, he's elusive, but he's unbelievably fast as well. I haven't seen anybody, like when Shane O'Donnell starts in that mazy run, there's very few that can stay with him. I think Tony Kelly's a really interesting one. Tony Kelly's really, really fast, but he comes into that category as well of a player who actually gets faster with the ball. Do you know what I mean? Some lads are just faster with the ball.
Well, I think he weaves his run a little bit too, so he's sort of soloing a little bit like that, but he's really, really quick and times it lovely. So when everyone else is almost stopping at a ruck, he's coming at it 100 miles an hour and getting the break out of there. But you made a good point then on how some guys develop a little bit of knacks to make up for the lack of speed that they might have. And I heard this phrase in soccer, I can't remember who said it, but his whole saying was, I was never the quickest, but I always left on time, which is a very nice way of putting it. But yeah, Shane O'Donnell, definitely really quick. He turns and goes at you, you're under pressure straight away. Other guys in Clare that are probably pretty quick, like Davy Fitzgerald, once he gets the legs pumping, a bit like Austin Gleason, different type of player in a lot of ways, of course, but he's such a big frame that he's hard to stop. Aaron Shanahan, when he gets the ball, it mightn't necessarily be all pace with him, even though he's relatively quick, but just the fact that he's very powerfully built, a combination of that and like legs churning, he's really hard to stop. Shane Amore is possibly the fastest of the lot in Clare. But again, like maybe a couple of the Cork guys, the consistency might not always be there. Like he can hurl, he's got the pace, but then like it's just not putting it together all the time, even though he has had some very good games too. Conor McGregor, if he could have stayed fit, I mean, maybe he's the best speedster that Clare have had in the last 10 years.
That goal, Shane, in the 2013 replay, like the one where he just dusted 5 or 6 players and belted into the top corner. The thing about speed as well, I think speed's a really interesting one now. Speed is being coached like a skill now, because if you have speed as a club hurler or a county player, it's not as good as, but it's like being able to strike off both sides or being able to strike over your shoulder. It's a really, really important skill. So you see a lot of coaches now, even at underage level, trying to develop the fast feet, be it through the ladders or be it through reactions or whatever, because it's the sort of thing that, you know, if you're not fast at 14 or 15, you're probably not going to be fast. It's a thing that has to be developed kind of at a young age. And I would always place an emphasis on, like, if I was coaching teams now, or I was involved in a club, heavily involved in underage club, I try and get them all doing athletics as well, and I try and get them all making sure that they're running properly.
I think Daryl O'Connell plays with Coola and previously Dublin and Kerry. He would have done athletics when he was underage, and that's probably a big reason that has him fairly quick over the turf as well. You know, when we were talking about Watford there, Desi Hutchinson, ex-Premier League footballer with Brighton, he's obviously very, very quick. But he actually said, I remember interviewing him before, and he was saying he wasn't overly quick in in professional soccer, but he found when he came back here, he's kind of gliding away from people. So that's, in a way, it's kind of like, all right, that's maybe we're not quite as professional as we thought in GAA. But I'm very interested to see at inter-county level. It is going to be winter hurling, so maybe it won't be as pronounced. But how quick he is compared with some of the best defenders at intercounty level. Tommy Ryan.
It's an interesting point on that, Shane, as well. Interesting point on that. But what Desi said is really interesting. I used to, when I was teaching in Banner College, you'd always bring them off to the South Leinster Athletics or whatever it was, or the county athletics. And when they were running against, it was usually GA, because we were a really strong GA school. So it was usually GA players, girls and boys, and you bring them, and they'd be competitive. But they wouldn't be like blowing people out of water or anything like that, far from it. But then they got into the GA pitch and they merged the skills with the pace or the athleticism, and they would be leaving players for dust. So there was Mairead Daly would be one example, or Grania Dolan, who both played hurling and football, I think, for Offaly. They'd never absolutely dust anybody on the athletic track, but they would do it on the GA pitch. So the athletics, a lot of the time, that's their sport, that's their skill. But when they're playing GA as well and they're able to do the two of them, if you're an athlete that has the skills, it's a massive advantage for you.
Yeah, and a lot of the counties are doing proper athletic coaching. I remember a couple of years ago doing personal training with Clean O'Connor, and she'd actually video you and play it back to you in slow motion, your running style, and then explain to you what it should be. Try and get you to practice that for a while, and then you look at it again, and she kind of almost goes split screen and shows you the two and says, now do you see the difference? And you're like, okay, fair enough. So that's obviously something the top counties are doing. And I seen...
Well, how many people will be running wrong, Shane? How many people will be running wrong
So
at club
many.
level? And it leads to injuries, number one, obviously, which is really, really bad. But it also leads to a slower level of speed output from you over a sustained period of time. So if you learn how to run properly from a young age, I just think the benefits of it are huge.
Yeah, but even like you're changing a direction. So obviously, let's say you're running towards the sideline to collect the ball, whether it's hurling or football, and you collect it, but then you have to turn all of a shot, and possibly with someone coming to hit you. So it's even how to organise your feet and what way to arrange yourself to when you're turning, where are you kind of stamping your foot down to get that breakaway power. So all that sort of stuff is being coached too, and if you do it right, you're going to be more stable, but you'll come out of the blocks that bit harder too. So there's probably an element of the counties that are really strong here. They've probably had a focus on that. Not to mention, a county like Cork, huge amount of adult players. You would imagine that there's just going to be more speedsters because there's just more players anyway. Just to finish out Waterford there, I think Peter Hogan's a pretty fast player, the Ballygunner man. Tommy Ryan has obviously produced an awful lot of speed in a couple of games in the last few years. What about Limerick then? There's plenty of guys here that you'd say are pretty quick or pretty hard to stop. Like Sean Flynn, Keane Lynch is definitely quick and very, very elusive, so maybe that's a lot of it too. Kyle Hayes is fast. Peter Casey's probably at the top end. David Dempsey, he's probably a combination of a bit like Tony Kelly, the way he weaves with the ball, and he's quick. So when he changes direction, it's very, very hard to keep with him. I think he's kind of elusive at the same time. Pat Ryan, we've seen Conor Boylan with some of those 80-yard solo runs from the Piercing as well. Gerard Hegarty, once he gets the legs pumping, he's hard to stop. So they've probably got an awful lot of guys that are tough to kind of stop or are pretty quick.
Well, you've nearly named out a full team there. So that's that's a team full of pace. And when we went through the team, you're not thinking, just we can really get at this lad for pace or anything like that. So that just kind of shows you how well-rounded Limerick are as well. I wouldn't say they have any one outstanding candidate maybe that would be in the top 2, 3, maybe-ish, but they have a load of lads that are going to be there or thereabouts. They have a load of lads that are really, really high level. But just on Tip, I think Tip is an interesting one there as well, because when we look at Tip, you're thinking of most of the mainstays outside of Seamus Callanan, Brendan Maher, Horrick, Ronan, even Noel McGrath, John McGrath, not probably blessed with pace, not slow, but not blessed with pace either. Callanan would be the starter that would really, really stand out, that when he gets the ball, he's able to just get away from a defender completely, and his speed of thought and speed of movement as well. I think lads that were coming on in the All-Ireland last year in the semi-final final, like Ger Brown, lightning pace, he got that great score against Wexford where he took a ball off a shoulder. Again, this is a big thing. If you're taking a ball and it's not from a standing position, if you're really good at timing your run, the timing is everything. You mentioned about Tony Kelly, Ger Brown would be another one as well. You're getting the ball on the shoulder, and if the defender is flat-footed, forget about it. It's game over. You're gone. He's gone 10 yards down the line. Jerome Cattle would be another one. And I think if you're talking about the hard-to-stop category, when the Bonner gets the ball, he'd be very, very hard to stop. That's from a mixture of pace and athleticism and a mixture of kind of bullishness that he would just put the head down and kind of go through you as well.
Yeah, and you'd probably add Cathal Barrett in there as well. He's probably the paciest of the Tipperary backline. Yeah, Seamus Callanan, absolutely. When he's running, very few can keep with him. And just back to Ger Brown as well, I've probably said this before, but he's a player that I think could be within the next 3 or 4 years a hurler of the year, but at the same time he might be one of these players who never fulfills his talent and is off the panel in that period of time. But I do think that if he's worked with well and if he's receptive to the messages that management give him, and I've no reason to believe he won't, but if he does, I think he could be up there at the very best, because his hurling is obviously top level. He'll probably fill out a bit more the more conditioning he does. and you just can't coach that amount of natural speed. So yeah, I'd put him up there in the speed category.
Just on that as well, Shane. A lot of it is natural too. A lot of lads have those fast twitch muscles. I would have loved to have them. For whatever reason, I had that endurance kind of gene where I could run at the same pace. I could run at 60 or 70% all day, no problem. But once you get over that, I would tire an awful lot quicker, and then you'd be more susceptible to injuries because you're running at that pace in games. And I know you'd be the same. Like, once again, like as with most of these categories, these we're talking about people that we're unbelievably envious of, and people that we'd love to have the same pace as.
Yeah, I'm more slow twitch, low endurance these days. What about Dublin? Because Dublin footballers have pace all over the field, but maybe not the same thing for the hurlers. I mean, Owen O'Donnell's not slow. Shane Barrett's definitely quick. Keane Boland is good on the ball and kind of elusive with that speed. Eamon Trollier-Dillon, he's probably the fastest of the lot, really. But outside of that, again, like, it comes back to it. Why aren't Dublin challenging at the very top level? Why aren't they winning more Leinster titles? Why aren't they getting there pushing for an All-Ireland? Again, in yet another category, they don't have that many standout names.
Yeah, fair point. We've done, best wrist, most skillful, best speedster, and you're not. Like, we haven't had like Shane Barrett was in the man marker discussion, but in the real game changing discussions, the speed, the score, best centre forward, or whatever you're going to want, they weren't really in the conversation. I think Chris Crummey deserves a mention in the hard to stop category once he puts his head down. Funny enough, like Kilkenny on the flip side of that, like all the really, really top counties, they have a lot of lads, I think, that would fall into the speed or hard to stop category. I think Wally Walsh is one of them great ones. Once he gets a head up of steam going, very, very hard to stop. I was watching Conor Brown a lot with the Village, and even with Kilkenny last year. Once he gets going, he's very, very hard to stop. As regards pace, you're probably looking at Colin Finley. Again, he's in the hard to stop category, but he's also in the category where he'll get the ball and actually just go away from you over 15 or 20 yards. I think Richie Latty's very, very quick as well. Billy Ryan in the full forward line, quick and has a good hand. Bill Sheehan as well. Probably a lot of people would say the main reason that Bill Sheehan is in with Kilkenny is because of his pace, because he mightn't be the most naturally kind of gifted hurler. And I think Pádraig Walsh is an interesting one as well, because how many times have you seen Pádraig Walsh get a ball and just kind of glide away on this mad solo run? Remember against Cork a couple of years ago in the league, I remember Tommy was doing commentary and Pádraig went on this crazy solo run and just it was gliding away from people the whole way. Mightn't kill you over 10 yards, but could probably really hurt you over 50 or 60.
Yeah, I think so. James Maher, like off the panel, I think in the last while from St. Lachlan's in Freshford, he probably, I think, he would have always been very, very good on his feet. I think he's definitely in that conversation. But I don't know if Kilkenny have as many speedsters as they used to have, or probably more to the point, as many guys who are hard to stop. Like, if you think over the years, Richie Power always had burning pace. Henry Sheffield
Fast Eddie.
Fast Eddie. Henry Sheffield was always hard to stop. Think of Owen Larkin coming off the shoulder, a la Tony Kelly and some other guys we've talked about as well. Really hard to stop and also very clever with the ball. Michael Finley coming up through the centre, Derek Lynn coming up through the centre, Cha Fitzpatrick quick. They probably actually don't have that same level, and maybe that explains why they're going for the drive for 5 this year without All-Irelands.
Yeah, I would say a lot of their forwards are still trying to take their man on, but there's a mixture of it. I don't think a lot of them are as fast, and I don't think they're as skillful or as dangerous as what went before them. Like, if Eddie Brennan took you on, you knew you were in trouble. If Richie Power took you on, you knew you were in trouble as well. Probably the level of pace and the level of class is probably like just not up there with what it was. But again, you're comparing now to probably the best team of all time, in fairness. So it's going to be hard to measure up. Just on a couple of other counties there, Laois, going down through Laois, found it hard to find someone who was really, really dynamically fast. I think Paddy Purcell, and I've said it before, I think like he's tailor-made for like 400 metre running or 800 metre running, because once he opens up those lungs at all, he's very, very hard to stop as well. He makes a load of those driving runs from the middle. I think Wexford are a good case. Wexford have plenty of pace, maybe no one lad that will kill you, but Rory O'Connor is kind of a mixture, a blend of that quick over 10 or 15 yards, quick in speed of mind, and also quick over 50 or 60 yards. I think Lee Chin comes into the more hard to stop category. Dermot O'Keefe is fast, but he's more elusive. And Dermot O'Keefe is a classic case of run at the right time and run to the right places. So he tends to run to areas that are not packed with people, and he all of a sudden his arms are up and he's looking for a pass, and you're wondering how did he get there? Don't know whether he's blistering pace. I think
he looks like he's going fast though at the very least.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I think Liam McGovern's another good one as well. I would say I think he's a mixture of the two as well. I think he's quick over a short distance and is able to sustain it over a longer distance too. They've quick defenders. Simon Donoghue, Damien Wreck all have pace.
Joe O'Connor.
Joe O'Connor as well would definitely come into that. And I suppose the big thing now is, what do you want in the last 15 minutes of a game? You want guys that are going to put lads on the back foot. So Cottle Dunbar will be very pacey. David Dunn will be the same, the left-handed hurler with the white helmet. They both be fast. And it's a case of, if you've hurled an hour, you do not want to see these lads coming in near you.
No, and like I would put Liam Ryan in the hard to stop category, because when he comes bursting out of full back, and obviously he has license to go where he wants, he's hard to stop. Kevin Foley's not slow, but I don't know if I'd put him in the top level of this. If I was going with anyone, it'd probably be Liam McGovern, which is quite something considering he's done his cruciate 2 times, and you and I have both been very strong in the fact that we think he should have been in the All-Star conversation last year, never mind not getting a nomination. Moving on to Galway then. Colin Mannion, probably deceptively fast. One of these lads who looks like he's just gliding along and ambling along, but he's always going at a good enough out clip. Probably Jason Flynn has a bit of pace as well. Joe Canning, definitely hard to stop. Conor Whelan is like a ball of fire going through. It's hard to know, is it just because he's such brute strength, or if he's actually really, really fast, or a combination of both, a bit like a souped up Aaron Shanahan in a way.
Yeah, when you can bring that basic speed with that power that you're able to just throw lads off you, that's what makes him so hard to stop. If he didn't have that burst of pace and he was throwing lads off, he wouldn't get time to get his shot away. Like how many times have you seen him blocked down? When he goes running at a lad and kind of uses his arms, uses his legs to power away, very, very rarely gets blocked down. Then, of course, hits the ball very high as well, so makes him very, very hard to block down. There's a lot of guys there. It's kind of hard when you're trying to really narrow it down. Who are you looking at towards the very, very top?
Yeah, it is so top, or so hard. I think I'm looking towards Cork in an awful lot of ways here, because I've Lahan, Dara Fitzgibbon, Shane Kingston. Then I'm looking at Tony Kelly and Shane Amore, maybe Desi Hutchinson, but I probably want to see him a little bit more. Peter Casey's up there. I think Gerard Brown for Tipperary, himself and Callanan, Colin Finley, but again, that's probably as much power as it is pace, but he does have pace, without doubt. He gets away from people. Liam McGovern, Colin Mannion. I'm probably looking more towards, I think in part of this too is, if it's really difficult to decide who's the paciest of the lot, you're probably going to have to go with consistent output. So I don't know, like in some ways you might question some of the Cork players, but I think Shane Kingston has to be up there. He's definitely at the latter end of the conversation, because I feel like in the last year or so he's maybe producing more regularly than Conor Lahan. But Dara Fitzgibbon, when he's on the top of the sod, I think he's probably pretty close to my number one.
It's such a badge of honour, isn't it? It's something everyone wants to know, who's the fastest within a squad. Yeah. And it's something that we'd love to do, is grab a couple of Cork lads, a couple of Clare lads, a couple of Limerick lads, a couple of Tip lads, put them all out over maybe 40 metres, maybe 80 metres, and maybe 120, and see who's able to win those races. It's a big thing within a panel as well about, the stats and stuff are usually kept fairly kind of tight-lipped, but everyone does want to know who's the fastest. I'm gonna go for 2 here, and I'm gonna go for them in 2 different categories. All right, so I'm gonna give it to Shane Kingston for raw speed, but when I mix speedster with kind of hurling, hurling speed, that's what I'm gonna call it as well. I'm gonna give it to Tony Kelly, because I think he always takes the ball at this unbelievable pace, and he's one of these hurlers that he's faster with the ball than he is without it. If you give him a ball, he just seems to inject even more pace into his game. So I think for someone like Shane Kingston is really, really exciting over the next 6 or 7 years with Cork. He could be potentially leading the Cork attack. And then on Tony Kelly's side, obviously, I just think the mixture of pace, timing and kind of hurling speed, they're the two I'd have up top.
Yeah, I think like Trolley or Dillon for Dublin is really, really fast. Seamus Callanan, you can't ignore him, and especially because he produced so much, like 8 goals in 8 games last year in the championship. Tony Kelly, yeah, right there. Conor Lehane. Like, I mean, if you had 20 yards of space of all these players, who do you want to give it to? I think Conor Lahan is up there as well. But just if he produced big scores in games more often, I'd probably be going for him. Kingston, yeah, I kind of agree with you. And I'm right there on the cusp of a few lads. But I think I'm going to stick with Dara Fitzgibbon because in space, he's so exciting to watch.
Yeah, when he gets the chance, as I said, he burns you over that first 10, but he'll also burn you from 10 metres to 40 or 50 metres. The only worry I'd have with Daryl Fitzgibbon, and I kind of said it before, is that his game is based so much on athleticism out around the middle of the field that if he picks up a knock, that he could be under pressure, because that's what his game is. His game is running, is doesn't maybe deliver the 20 or 30 passes. So I think from his point of view, for longevity in his game, it would be no harm to come up with a plan B just in case he does start having problems with his legs. But yeah, he's an absolute joy to watch him full flow.
Okay, so Tony Kelly for you, Dara Fitzgibbon for me. We're happy with that.
Yeah, Tony Kelly, Shane Kingston.
Well, which is it?
I'm gonna go for hurling speed, and I'm gonna give it to Tony Kelly.
So he's your top best speedster, and Dara Fitzgibbon is mine. Okay, that's it. Brought to you by 65hurls.com. Don't forget to get your 6 there. Thanks, Michael.
Cheers, Shane.